Because what's your view? Do you think migration is going to continue at this level? Do you think it can? Can we sustain that? Because if it does, then your car market is going to remain buoyant and strong.
Correct.
Yeah, I think the government's taking flack now because there's people can't afford rents. They say there's 3.1 million people can't afford food, and that's going to start to backfire on them. How does that translate through to dealers, new car dealers, and what should they be doing and looking at going forward?
With 30 years' experience in auto logistics and state-of-the-art locations in 5 major Australian cities, Precar Fleet Services are a premier all-in-one solutions provider for commercial vehicle fleet operators, leasing companies and original equipment manufacturers. Please visit precar.com.au and click on the link to Fleet Services.
Well, that's what I don't understand. And this is the bit where I'm not sure this is a different podcast or whether it's the same one. It's an interesting one, John, because new car sales look very much like they will continue to be strong. You've got supply no longer being an issue of any significance. There's always going to be little pockets where you can't get a particular model. You'll have EVs increasing in numbers. So there's the ability to charge, the ability to supply, and there's always the changing business model of agency versus the traditional dealer model. So when you look at the volume increase on the back of migration, which is causing it, and the key drivers of that is you need mobility. The downside is that if interest rates stick around for as long as they are and people can't afford, you've got inflation still very high, you've got either rents or home ownership increasing as a weekly, daily, monthly cost. That starts to impact your ability to finance the purchase. And we know finance is a big part of buying a vehicle. So when finance starts falling over or orders start to be cancelled, that's when things start to hurt. The key there will be the factories supplying the inventory based on a projection that 1.2 is going to be the new normal. So if 1.2 becomes the new normal and we've caught up with the supply and it's no longer a catch-up of what we didn't supply from the first years of the pandemic of 20 and 21 and 22, we're now catching up with supply for migration. So once we catch up with migration, if that was to slow, you'll have these inventories of vehicles coming at you at 1.2 plus volumes. The car park's already at 21.3 million cars. If it stops growing and you then have an oversupply of cars, then in the car park, you then have to start taking cars off. Now, you might end up with a younger car park. We might get rid of some of those old clunkers. But it's going to be an interesting one if people can't afford to buy the new cars. There still may be a reluctance or an inability for someone to get out of, say, a $5,000 car, move up to a $10,000 car, or those $10,000 people moving up into a $20,000 car. So these are the issues that we're going to be seeing that are on a macro scale. On a micro perspective, finance, supply, demand is going to be there, but it will come down to how much the demand is satisfied by the supply this year and early into next year. That will then mean margins will potentially be eroded. We're already starting to see floor plan costs starting to show up in the financials of the publicly listed dealer groups as an increasing cost. Margins are still quite good, but they're starting to ease a little bit. So what we're seeing is that you need to be on your game. You need to manage that inventory and you need to have good sales process to maintain your margins.
Mark, a lot of dealers are sitting with waitlists at the moment, and most of them have deposits against those orders. How strong do you think those orders are? And can dealers hold customers to a particular order even if he's got a deposit? If he's got a deposit, can that order still fall over?
Oh, absolutely. And we're seeing and hearing instances where orders are now starting to fall over in larger quantities because the orders were placed so far out when the financial circumstances were different for that particular customer, because the finance doesn't necessarily continue on. It gets reviewed at the time of transaction, not the necessarily time of order. It's when the vehicle's being delivered and need to revisit the finance and whether it's still the serviceability criteria is still met. So these are the issues that are starting to bite. There's the leasing companies that are placing orders on multiple dealers to try to secure a vehicle. Once a vehicle is secured, they then cancel the order on the other dealers. Those other dealers don't know they're being shopped versus another dealer, or getting an order placed with them versus another dealer. So there are those issues that are appearing as well. So it's interesting times, and there's no obligation for the customer not to get there, to relinquish their deposit. If they place a deposit, they'll say, "Well, I want my money back. You didn't supply in the time frame that you were supposed to."
And Mark, before COVID, 30 to 40% of dealers were under quite heavy financial pressure. Margins were tight, floor plan interest was high, and a lot of dealers were really struggling. Do you think there's a chance that we might go back to that level? Or do you think things with migration and that will remain reasonably strong, that dealers will be able to trade through this difficulty with other headwinds in the market?
Well, it's interesting. The model will be changing, because as you sell more EVs, there's less service work. But that still will take some time to bite into the absorption into the financials of a dealership. The migration, the migration is because that is something the government can control. And we basically lived with 2 years of zero migration. In fact, we had an exodus of people when COVID hit, and we pushed all these people out and got rid of all the low-paid workers. But what we're seeing now is we've got this population boom that's putting so much pressure on the economy, and it's actually falsifying in many ways the unemployment rate. So we're showing a very low unemployment rate, but we're seeing people struggling to make ends meet. Now, that can't be ignored. If you're still getting lots of orders for vehicles, at some point the music's going to stop. So you just need to be very mindful. I think it's being very vigilant on your process, very, very vigilant on your inventory management is the critical point, and being vigilant on any telltale canaries in the mine is signals where that, oh, hang on, we're starting to get a little bit of a tapering off of activity. What are the leading indicators saying? If conversion starts dropping off, if inquiry starts dropping off, if cancellations start increasing, you really want to be tracking those metrics on a daily basis, so you can really see where things are, if they're starting to move adversely in one way or another. You'll still get fluctuations, but you just want to make sure that you don't there isn't a structural shift that's going to impact you. And certain brands will be impacted more than others, because there'll be some brands that are, that have good B2B baselines. Well, they're going to be great. You've got other brands that are very emotive retail, and they can be impacted if they're really catering for that 35 to 48 high finance sector of consumers that start to struggle to get access to funds, or start to struggle to make home loan payments, and then potentially car payments, or even change their accessibility to finance.
If you can let us know what your views are, we have given our perspective, what we think is happening in the market. If you have a different view or see things differently, write the comments below and let us know what you think, and we can include it into our next discussion.
Thank you for listening.